In the top stories, Sugar Boys draw with El Salvador in World Cup qualifier. U.S. Coast Guard continues to intercept thousands of Cuban migrants, and a judge ruling may lead to 2 police officers being charged for shooting a 12-year-old. Good afternoon and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Friday, 12th June 2015. I'm Jason Davis. First up in national news, the St. Kitts and Nevis Sugar Boys were forced to settle for a draw against El Salvador in the second round of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers on Thursday night. Both teams missed out on a number of scoring opportunities in the highly anticipated match at Warner Park. The Latin American team, however, drew first blood just minutes before halftime when Irvin Herrera capitalized on a misplayed ball by captain Atiba Harris in front of St. Kitts and Nevis's goal in the 41st minute to give his team a 1-0 halftime lead. In the second half, Orlando Mitchum scored the equalizer for the national team in the 68th minute with a magnificent boot after El Salvador's failed attempt to clear the ball. Just 3 minutes later, Walsall playmaker Romain Sawyers made a beautiful cross to shake his defender before finding the back of the net, giving St. Kitts and Nevis a 2-1 advantage. The 84th ranked El Salvador team showed resilience and patience, which paid off in the 86th minute. Nelson Bonilla headed in an easy goal off a free kick to level the score at 2 apiece. The return leg will be played on Tuesday, 16th June in El Salvador. Caribbean Operations Branch Chief Ollie Miller says the week-long firearms trafficking workshop that was sponsored by the U.S. government met one of its objectives, which was to create partnerships. Speaking during Thursday's closing ceremony at the police training school, Miller said the government of St. Kitts and Nevis can consider itself a partner of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms and Explosives of the U.S. government.
St. Kitts and Nevis and Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives are new partners in combating violence and firearms trafficking. And it is this theme that I would like to continue, because now you have a true partner to support you, work with you, and to continue this battle.
Miller said the partnerships developed are both professional and personal.
There was seriousness, but there was fun. And there was a camaraderie that I observed that was something that it really hits the heart. When I can see at a social gathering one of our instructors playing dominoes and losing, obviously, he may have to practice a little bit more. But when you have that camaraderie of sharing an alcohol, an adult beverage, and discussing mutual problems that are no different here or than in the United States, there is that partnership, there is that bond.
Among the topics addressed during the workshop were firearms identification, social media exploitation, how firearms are trafficked, e-trace, investigative tools and proper collection methods, knowledge of the integrated ballistics identification system, proper handling of a firearm, and the role of cyber and social media. Medical Chief of Staff Dr. Cameron Wilkinson has placed on record the commendable job of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force and the St. Kitts Nevis Defence Force in providing hospital security following a recent shooting incident involving an alleged gang figure. Dr. Wilkinson said when he arrived at JNF he saw evidence of good crowd control, adding that he was escorted into the hospital and also observed security personnel at all entrances and exits. A release from the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service says the measures provided an added layer of security to ensure staff, patients and visitors at JNF were kept safe. In addition to the efforts of the security forces, the Ministry of Health and the hospital administration have been executing short and long-term plans to improve security at JNF. Among the initiatives is the placement of security personnel at the hospital 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Regionally, the U.S.-Cuba relationship is changing, but the U.S. Coast Guard continues to interdict thousands of Cuban migrants risking their lives to take advantage of the controversial wet foot, dry foot policy. More in this report.
Just off the Florida Keys, 6 Cuban migrants are being transferred from one Coast Guard cutter to another. They are searched, clad in jumpsuits they will wear until they are sent back home. Migrants often use flimsy rafts called rusticas to make the dangerous sail 90 miles across the Florida Straits.
This is the Wild West of the Coast Guard. We've got drugs, we've got migrants, and we've got search and rescue.
Over the years, Cubans have adapted to U.S. patrols by traveling to Mexico and heading overland, or finding new sea routes to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. While U.S. policy toward Cuba is changing, if anything, the Coast Guard's migrant interdiction mission has gotten harder.
I think it's going to get probably a little worse before it gets better.
U.S. authorities turned back nearly 4,000 migrants last year, a number expected to climb this year over fears that the U.S. will end its controversial wet foot, dry foot policy. It allows Cubans who touch U.S. soil to stay. But analysts and many Cuban Americans say the Cold War era special privilege has outlived its purpose.
Most people agree that it has to be reviewed to avoid abuses that are taking place right now.
These migrants recently came within 300 feet of Key Biscayne before being stopped. On another patrol, AP rode on Coast Guard vessels and aircraft. We agreed not to show migrant faces.
It can be disheartening to see case after case after case, or repeat offender after repeat offender.
Sometimes children are among those living on deck, where they get medical attention and comforts, including a fresh egg atop the regular meal of rice and beans.
So much of your time spent on board is morale driven, and a lot of morale is derived from food.
The Coast Guard estimates that interdiction, much of it aimed at Cubans, has cost more than $3 billion in the past 5 years. But after decades of stagnation, some are optimistic.
That's new to them. Seeing President Obama on their television set conversing with Castro certainly is a step in a new direction. As to what that direction is going to be, changes in the air.
Until that change happens, the missions will continue where the desperate meet the dedicated in the Florida Straits. Tony Winton, Associated Press, Miami.
In Guyana, advocates who were associated with the slain political activist Courtney Crumowing want the new administration to keep its promise to investigate his death.
Regime change has come to Guyana, but relatives and friends of fallen activist Courtney Crumowing are still in search of justice. Yesterday, fellow activists who protested alongside the murdered Crumowing in front of the office of the Attorney General organized what they said was a reminder to politicians of the APNU-AFC government of their promise to the family and friends of the slain activist. Yesterday also would have been the 41st birth anniversary of Crumowing. Mark Jacobs spoke with this newscast at the Parliament Square prior to the official opening by Minister of Communities, Ronald Bulkan.
I would say that the APNU-AFC coalition wrote the victory on the death of Courtney Crumowing, and we'd like to make sure that this case is resolved. And the Minister of Justice, I think it is, Cameron Ramjatan, said that he's going to reopen the case. So we're just here to remind them that on this special day that Parliament has reconvened, it's also the day of Courtney Crumowing's would have been his 41st birthday. So we'd like to get closure for his family, his family and friends.
Crumowing was brutally gunned down in Diamond Housing Scheme on the east bank of Demerara, where he was urging residents to vote for change. The 40-year-old, some months before his death, began a one-man protest in front of the AG's office, calling for the former holder of that office, Anil Nandlal, to demit office over his admittance of misusing public funds, among other issues. Then in opposition, the APNU-AFC on the campaign trail said it would ensure that Crumowing's killers are brought to justice. The activist prior to his death has accused two former government officials of threatening him. The police said there was nothing linking any of them to the crime. Reporting for Capital News, Ipha Wharton.
Internationally, a Cleveland judge ruled that there is probable cause to charge two police officers in the death of 12-year-old Tamir Rice. The ruling is largely symbolic since it will not force prosecutors to act. Whether or not the officers will actually be charged is up to a grand jury. CBS's Dean Reynolds reports.
The shooting was captured on tape. That's 12-year-old Tamir Rice in a Cleveland park waving a toy gun last November. Officers arrived and he was shot less than 2 seconds later. Community activists are frustrated that prosecutors have not yet charged the police. They filed affidavits using a little-known Ohio law which allows any citizen with knowledge of a case to ask a judge to issue an arrest warrant.
When I found out about this obscure, unknown law, I thought it was a great way to pursue justice without having to wait apathetically to see if hopefully the prosecutor would do what was right.
Cleveland Municipal Judge Ronald Adrien said both officers who arrived on the scene should be charged. Timothy Lohman with murder for firing the shots, and his partner Frank Garmbach with negligent homicide. But a criminal complaint from a prosecutor must be filed. Activists are hoping that the ruling puts pressure on the county prosecutor, Tim McGinty.
I hope it puts a whole lot of pressure on him to do what is right. It's time for our prosecutor to not only protect those that are part of the culture of blue, but to protect us as American citizens, black or white.
Attorneys for officers Garmbach and Lohman say this ruling won't affect how the case will move forward.
It's important to realize that we're in no different spot than we were 24 hours ago or 10 hours ago. The prosecutor still have to make this decision.
But Tamir Rice's family says pressure from the activists has provided a blueprint for addressing concerns between the community and the cops. We are grateful, they said, that the wheels of justice are starting to turn.
A civil rights leader in Washington state is embroiled in a bizarre race controversy. Rachel Dolezal, who leads the Spokane chapter of the NAACP, is being accused of falsely portraying herself as black. Her own parents say she's misrepresenting major portions of her life. Adriana Diaz reports.
Ombudsman for the interim and permanent.
Rachel Dolezal sat down with Sean Chitnis of our CBS affiliate KREM to address the chaos swirling around her.
Would you identify yourself as an African American?
I actually don't like the term African American. I prefer black. And I would say that if I was asked, I would definitely say that yes, I do consider myself to be black.
But Dolezal's biological parents say that's just not true.
What is your daughter's ethnicity?
Our daughter is primarily German and Czech, and of European descent.
So she's white.
Caucasian. She's white. Mm-hmm.
Ruthann and Larry Dolezal live in a rural home in Troy, Montana, where they say Rachel was born nearly 40 years ago.
She's a blonde, blue-eyed, freckle-faced girl growing up.
Rachel has wanted to be someone she's not. She's chosen not to just be herself, but to represent herself as an African-American woman or a biracial person.
Dolezal's biography at Eastern Washington University says she received her master's degree from Howard University, a historically black college in Washington, D.C. KREM obtained police reports in which Dolezal says she was the victim of several hate crimes. Police responded, but no suspects were ever identified and no arrests were ever made.
So what would you say to those who are questioning your ethnicity?
Those who are questioning or those who are just reading the article? I mean, so the article, I feel like the article is what's questioning, and really it's Larry and Ruthann who are questioning. And so what I say to them is, I don't give two what you guys think.
The president of the NAACP, who we think is a black woman who says she's the victim of hate crimes, might not be black. That seems like a misrepresentation.
I can understand that. I mean, like I said, it's more important for me to clarify that with the black community and with my executive board than it really is to explain it to a community that I quite frankly don't think, really understands.
In the past, Dolezal has identified herself as a mix of black, white, and Native American. She says the controversy is an ugly byproduct of family dysfunction.
In the weather, winds today are easterly at 12 to 23 miles an hour. Seas are moderate with waves of 5 to 7 feet. And small craft operators and sea bathers should be careful as cautions are in effect for coastal waters, mainly on the eastern side of the islands. Today will be sunny to partly sunny and slightly hazy with periods of increased cloudiness and brief passing showers. Temperatures are expected to reach a high of 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunset today will be at 6:45 p.m. and sunrise tomorrow will be at 5:36 a.m. That brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for watching. I'm Jason Davis. Have a great afternoon.